we get like there is this
Yes.
traffic count. Not saying it should justify one way or another, but that would really help to plead the case. To an extent, I don't know, it would validate it.
Okay, let me show you the pedestrian count at about,
Somewhere probably
2:30
very
to
embarrassing.
3
I have no idea.
you know.
That's a good question, actually. Well, there we are. So the camera's up
But
there.
you got Baldwin,
Good.
you know,
Let me
you know,
just,
I've seen that.
Yeah, you know when you're ready. And actually
It
traffic
is
slows
live.
down
Just
because
wanted to
they
make
have
that
the cars
announcement.
parked.
Thank you.
Okay, we're live.
Okay, we're gonna get this water and sewer meeting, called to order at 4:02. And we are here to discuss, we've had a request from the state of Ohio, Department of Natural Resources probably is who it come from, for issues that they're having at Van Buren State Park with their water quality. So, Jeremy, I'm gonna let you go
Yeah.
ahead and start with, explaining what they requested.
Yep, so give you a long story short of it, State Park, which is in Van Buren, which is right here, ODNR, they are having troubles with their existing well and stuff, and especially the water up there, I believe, has sulfur and stuff. And they are wanting to extend the city sewer, city water down through there. We have a 12-inch main that is actually going on 613 right here with a stub that is coming off of that right now. So what they would be doing is running down 218 here, all the way down to the east side of their property. They are going to be running it, they are going to be paying for it, and then they are turning it over to us. No matter what, if they want water, no matter, we say, hey, that's going to be one big service line, or that's going to be our line, they need water, they want it, they looked at all other options for this, and to have quality water come out to that state, to the campground, to the state park, they are needing this to be extended out there. Working with them, they only need a 6-inch line to satisfy what they are needing, but I also have 17 properties down through there that could potentially tie into it, as well as the campground, and then also fire suppression down through there, to set ourselves up for any additional taps. And in the future, if looping the system or anything like that, I would like to have that as an 8-inch line. They will be installing that 8-inch line, and normally what we do, I think the most recent one was the best subdivision out, what is that, Deer Valley, Deer Landing, out on the southeast of town. That was a 6-inch. We paid the upcharge to a 16-inch. I know it's not exactly the same, but we've done this in the past. But we would just pay the delta in material only, not labor, not stone, anything like that, just straight material of the pipe. Right now, off of their estimated quantities, what they have, so it's roughly 8,400 feet of pipe that they are going to be putting in. Their change in cost, or I guess the upcharge to an 8-inch is $82,964.60. And that is all kind of estimated quantities right now from the plant. So that will be ultimately, at the end of the day, how much is actually going in the ground. We will be inspecting that and all that kind of stuff before we just say, hey, here it is. We'll have invoices showing this is what the 6-inch costs, this is what the 8-inch costs, so we can compare apples to apples on the cost difference of that.
Did I hear that right? So you said the difference between a 6-inch line over that length and an 8-inch line is 82,000?
82,000.
Foot.
$10.
But essentially, it's essentially
Yeah.
10 cents to the dollar
Yeah.
comparison on total cost, project cost.
8,000 feet.
8,400.
Yeah, their total
Yeah.
project is how much?
I would say it's 1.2, probably what they're looking at for a complete project. If we ran that, it would be in the seven figure range.
Well, 8 inches enough.
For what we have out there, so we got this 12-inch. If we run it, and I've been, working with Jason on that too. We have an 8-inch. If we have that 8-inch go down through here, we can create a loop system eventually down through here. But if, what kind of expansion that would go down through there, I feel like an 8-inch would be enough right now. because we're not completely looping the system, I wouldn't want to put a 16-inch or, you know, something big that then we would have water quality issues. This right now, if everyone connected on there, it would be, what was that? I figured with kind of the standards you go by, it's about 38,000 gallons a day. And that's if everyone connected and everyone ran the average amount for a home or for a home for a campground.
So you're saying 38,000 gallons a day?
Yeah.
That would be year-round, because the campground and the park are not going to be year-round. They're going to be seasonal.
Right, they're 9 months out.
So
I
that
believe,
number
9
is
months.
probably
It's
maybe
gonna
a
be-
little bit high.
Yeah, that's high. I'm
Yeah.
figuring high on that kind of end. You know, that is a dead end line. We do it before they start up. We would have to check stuff, maybe do a blow off or something like that. But they kind of understand that. But you know, the state with them coming out and saying that we're paying for this line. I brought up the rotary and all that kind of say you can set this up as a rotary, and they said nope, we want to install it, we need it, we're going to run it, and then we want you guys to maintain it. Or pretty much we're going to turn it over to you guys when we're all said and done.
So they don't want to charge anybody that wants to hook on
No,
to it, and stuff like that. They don't want to get into the building.
They don't want to get into that because I told them that they could recruit some of the costs and they don't want to get in that. So I believe I don't know what state grant they got, but they got some.
So they're willing to spend over $1 million just to get water down to the park. That's
Yeah.
basically what they're.
Pretty much.
Wouldn't you expect those? Are the other folks, I don't know how many.
There's 17 properties.
And are they pulling the same well water?
There's been in the past couple years, there's been a couple properties that have been asking to extend that down there, but it just wasn't feasible for us to ever do it. But none of those properties are required to tie into it,
But they would.
but I would assume they would. I know that, the Venture Bound Campground, has had some interest into it as well.
And if you said if you would loop, it would be down that north-south road near the cursor.
Yeah, right now it would be right here because we do have a line that's out here, so we could loop that. It's down here, so our next roadway would be over in here. And then we would have to find the next closest to the south or run that all the way up to the north.
Okay, I had you, so you have a 12-inch going out, is it hugging 613?
It's on 613. I believe it stops over in this
Just
area.
past that housing development.
Yeah, just because we have a 12-inch that feeds this housing development. And then it stops right there. There's a cap. So if we ever in the future would need to, we could, you know, say this developed or anything like that, we could loop that system to create a kind of movement through there.
So I have a couple questions, Randy.
Good idea.
First question is, what water service agreement are you operating under with Van Buren right now? State. There's multiple agreements with Van Buren. I believe it's the 99 one, but I don't know that for sure. Do you know, Randy?
Yeah, 99 sounds like when they initially did it.
Well, there was an update after the original, and the 99 was done not long after there. So my question is kind of twofold. One, it would appear to me based on what you're proposing, you can operate under at minimum the 99 agreement if there's not an update since then. Which means if I'm reading this right, and again, I'm not legal, and the law director's not here, this is Van Buren's call, not ours, with one exception. If I'm reading right, the definition of the territory.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
If I'm reading right, the definition of the territory of Van Buren's turf ends at the east center line of section 8, which splits the East Side Campground in half. So I'm presuming in order to do this, you would not only need, well, Van Buren would have to agree to do it. So they would have say in how it's done and what's done. They would have to meet our specs. They would have, I don't know how the authority would work between the two entities, but according to the contract that I read, they have to meet our specs, but it's their project. And it has direct impact on the limitations within that agreement that was done in 99, if that is the standing agreement. And you would probably have to adjust the agreement slightly. And I would, from my perspective, amend it to include the Van Buren State Park so that it doesn't divide the state park in half, because the area they really want the water to is just outside that boundary if I'm reading the map right.
So I have been in communication with Ed May on that. He's fully aware of it. He's in full support of it with, I know he's been kind of working on things on his side as well, but he is good with project. He pretty much, you know, with me and him working back and forth, he said, I'm gonna rely on you on engineering because like you said, it's at the end of the day, we would have to make sure it's through our specs and all that kind of stuff. So he's working with us on that, but he has been in full support of this project. Pretty much is like how soon, you know, he's pretty much said how soon can we get it done because he understands the need out there. So Van Buren has been involved with this heavily as well, but amending that can be something that can be amended for that, you know, it for what you're saying.
Well, and again, I'm not claiming to have knowledge that the lottery needs that, but I think you guys need to take that into consideration.
Are you saying that there's also another agreement?
I have 2 agreements, 3 agreements here between Van Buren and county.
And
us.
I'll have to look to see if,
There was a progression, of contracts. Like one was a
That's what I'm
master
asking.
meter,
One
and
was a
then
master
it
meter.
became full service.
They're
So
different.
he's talking about
2
multiple,
of them
but
are
it's really
progressive.
the most
99
recent
is the
is the one
latest.
we're
The
acting
third
on.
one is a totally
So
different agreement.
we're blending concepts when it's one. What's the date? We're working with the most recent agreement.
Is that the 99 ones?
I don't know the date, but it's the one where the original was a master meter and then it transitioned over to full service. So whatever date it is, I'm not going to be quoted to a date.
The one I read is dated the 4th day of June 1999, and then there's a separate county one. And that one even specifies that it's Van Buren's engineering project. And the language is, I don't know, ambiguous at best as who would run this project.
so this is like a manufacturer came in and they had to extend our line for their service type thing. I mean, if you're saying like Van Buren should be running this and all that kind of stuff, this would be like a private company coming in to extend that, and then they're turning it over to us for that.
I don't think you can do it unless you do it through this agreement. And I think Van Buren has to be included, but I get your point, what you're saying. I just, we probably have some gray areas to clean up so we don't end up in a pickle down the road. We followed this properly.
So Jeremy, the state of Ohio is doing this regardless.
They're doing this regardless. They, you know, if worst comes to worst, we can set a meter at 613 and then that's their line all the way down through there and pretty much no one can tap into it.
What's the timeline for the state?
I think they're wanting to move on it, you know.
Do they have a shovel up there right now?
No, they don't have a shovel up there right now, but this is a decent cold weather project
Okay.
for them. So they're not gonna wanna wait around. I mean, if they have money, they have state funding tied to that, that's a totally different time zone or time frame than what we run. So if they have state funding tied to it, they're not gonna wanna sit around and wait for it.
And they have no other options, right? We're there.
They have no other options. They've explored all options because they were going back and forth on that and we're pretty much their resort on it. So that's what I'm saying. If we don't do it as an 8-inch and pay the upcharge and we say, you know, no, keep it as a 6 and we put a master meter down at 613, that's their line for 8,400 feet.
I don't think that's our call. The agreement that I read, but I don't know. Again, I can't give you a legal opinion.
So
But
you
at first
need
means
something,
It's Van Buren's decision as to what the size is, how it goes and how it's done. And they'd have to put into the center line in section 8 or section 17, which is below it, unless we mutually amend that agreement to cover full dimensions of the state park.
so what would you like to see, or I guess what would this committee like to see from that? I mean, do you want a letter from Ed May showing his support with that, or?
This says it's their project. I think you need to go.
Well, I guess that's what my question
We
was.
need to get Don involved with this and see about the legals on this. I want to hear his side of what it means also. But I'm almost positive that I know Ed May is not going to want to put a line in and not be able to have people that live right outside his jurisdiction being able to hook onto that line,
Right.
which is what would happen if the state just.
Sounds like what we need, like an agreement with the village council and the mayor and then with us, is that how that would work?
I think the details of
Or the amendment?
the amendment in the contract are residual effects moving forward with the project if this water and sewer committee is okay. I think the intent of this conversation was The state wants to run this out there. They're running the project, and we, for our system, would prefer, because of this, the cost effectiveness of it, upsize this from a 6 to an 8 inch. That's the conversation. The devil in the detail of the contract is nothing more than amendments, conversations with state, Van Buren, and us to move forward. That to me, I think is irrelevant when we sit down and understand it. We can make an amendment to make sure it's crystal clear what the agreement needs to be moving forward. But the committee conversation is, this is what they're going to do. Are we okay with them tying into our system? And are we okay upcharging this from a 6 to an 8?
I would support upcharging it from 6 to an 8.
Yeah, that's.
To me, yeah.
The rest of it, I think, is stuff that we can work through the weeds with the legal director. Law director.
Why put it at 6 when you had to come back later and upsize it anyways later?
Yeah.
The question from my perspective is that the two parties agree that you have the right to spec it. I mean, you're the city engineer, you
Right.
spec the system. The question is, do you have the right to spec it, oversize spec it? In other words, does it have to meet your minimum spec and what is expected with the 6 inch? Or do you have the right to over, and if not, then you guys are gonna have to come to an agreement. And Van Buren's council, not just this individual, their council is gonna have to be involved based on the stock.
Well, their legislative process is their legislative process, but we can take that to them and let them work through their legislative process.
Right.
And then they bring it back and we'll do the amendment. So I'm not going to talk about their
It's not
legislative
going to cost them
process.
anything,
No.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's,
because we're paying for the upcharge.
Right.
this is the state, Van Buren coming to us. They have to work through their legislative process.
Working with them, I feel confident that they're not going to put just a 6 inch line because fire suppression down through there could be compromised. I'm not saying it is, because 6 inch line is what you need for water or for fire hydrants, but you know, people tie into it. And if there's any other future expansion, then, you know, 6 to 8, it's not much, but I mean, yeah, I think working with Ed May on that kind of stuff, I think I can't speak for him, but he is in support of the project. But we can get all that stuff on the side. It would be more for this question is if you guys as a committee and then council wholly is, if you're good with paying, you know, and I know that's a rough number to say, $83,000 for that upcharge, or for that, you know, additional 2 inches of the pipe.
Upsize.
To me, it's pretty self-evident that going with an 8 inch is the way to go instead of a 6. Why go on the small side there when you can clearly meet future demand with an 8?
Right.
I would make a motion that we pursue this with Van Buren to whatever agreement we have to come to. Let's go with the 8 inch. 8 inch line.
We will
Take
do
on
our
the
due
upcharge.
diligence to make sure it's.
Yeah, we'll make sure
Proper language is supported.
amendments or anything that's needed for that. But for you guys, I guess for this is, because this body will have to approve, you know, because I haven't been part of like the One Energy one and all that. They have to approve this prior to, because One Energy line was, when we were in that line up through there, that was upsized.
I remember that.
Yeah.
No, this I'm more concerned because the Van Buren agreement is in place. And that want to make sure all those paragraphs are satisfied properly before we can do anything.
Yeah, and I'll second the motion. Jeremy, where do you think you are water-wise on the east side of this? So after you talked about moving up to the sports complex and the 12 inch, where else are we?
Over in this area,
Where we currently are, is that what you're asking?
I would say this is our extreme east right now.
Okay,
Going down south, now looking at it, I mean, my next point is going to be back at Main Street. We don't have anything
so we've got,
extended out.
we're in a big
Now you
gap,
know,
okay.
Yeah, so there's a big gap within there.
So you're not gonna be looping that in the next.
South.
Yeah.
No, and the
That's
contract
not gonna
calls,
happen.
and Randy, the contract calls for Van Buren to be completely responsible for chlorinating that water and everything else they need to do at their expense to keep it safe and healthy. So there's some pretty rigid caveats in there, and they spent a lot of time working on that. I think they spent almost 6 years working this out.
And, you know, they only need it to go to roughly right here, but we have them extend to the east property line. So if this homeowner ever wants to extend it, then they're not extending across someone else's property. So that's why it's ran out to this point. But this will be our new stream.
What is run over there? We have something over there now?
No, the line
No, I'm saying the
proposing.
proposed line, it's
to go to the east
Is that,
property
is
line.
that your spec or theirs?
We had that spec
Because
out.
that's a standard out way to do it, right?
Yeah, so that way, you know, if you put it at your west property line and I'm east of you, then I'm not right in front of your property.
Right, I give you my permission.
Okay, where's the east edge of the park,
Right up by where the arrow
That
is.
cursor,
And
That's
then
the
they,
entrance.
this is the entrance and then they have an east entrance here, so it's going to their east property line.
Yeah, and the current legal boundary is about in the middle of that section.
So aren't all those people just to the east of that gonna be licking our chops?
Possible.
You can't do anything about it currently, the way the laws are set up.
Who's gonna build these people on this new one? Like, who's gonna build the state park? Did the city of Finley build them? Van Buren build them?
We would be, because don't we run their system too, so we would be,
Oh, we
it'd be
so we
through
run our
Range
system.
Road.
Are you including, you're including it under their current agreement? You know, it's just gonna be part of their volume access and everything else.
I would,
Yeah.
I would assume, but I would have
That's
to,
what I
you know,
assumed.
like you said, talk to the water record.
I mean, the 38,000 gallons a day is done.
Well, they have a limit.
I
Yeah, they-
understand.
yeah,
Since you've read that, you know what the one that is.
it's actually, yeah, it's spelled out in here. It's around 500,000, I think, gallons.
Oh. They're nowhere near that, so.
No, I mean total. You're in full expansion.
Oh,
In other
okay.
words, they analyzed the system, decided,
What are they at now
worked with
anyway?
the state and the EPA, and they said, moving on to the future, this is the limit that you're allowed up here, no matter how developed you are.
Okay.
So we've got a motion, got a second, just we'll vote for it, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. 3-0. And administration will look at the legal portions of this.
Mhm.
Yep.
And you'll be in contact with Van Buren and their council or mayor, whoever is representative.
Yep.
To make sure that they're okay with this, and we'll get all of the verbiage put into the contract that needs to be there.
Yeah, we'll need all that on our side. We'll need your legislation, we'll need the state stuff, we'll need everything.
Yeah.
This will be more detailed than normal, unfortunately.
Okay. I guess that's it on this project. So move forward with it, we'll be waiting for the information. I'm gonna call the meeting adjourned at 4:24. Thank you everyone for coming.
All right, thank you.
Need my Herbie Hancock. Oh, my motion?
Your motion's the one that